Tonight on the Black Channel, reason number 5,628 not to allow these people to have a seat at the table to speak. The Black Channel is live. Unapologetic, unadulterated, and absolutely uncompromising. Greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world, and welcome back to the home, the haven, the stronghold, and the everlasting superfortress of intelligent black thought. We are the Black Media, and this is the Black Channel. And I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the voice of Black America, the Black Authority, broadcasting to you live from the only historically black college and university of higher education and learning in the cosmos. You are, of course, welcome to join us. And join us you shall, because on tonight's program here, you know, look, what I'm going to say next, this really doesn't have a whole lot to do really about where you fall on the scale of black empowerment necessarily. This is just about common sense in politics and knowing how not to make a complete fool of yourself. And there is one gentleman here who is apparently determined that he is going to win Olympic gold across the board. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Mr. Bernie Moreno. He's running, or at least he thinks he's running, for Senate out in Ohio. And man, I'm telling you, if you're gonna go national and if you're gonna get seen and introduced in the national politic, boy, I could think of some worse ways to do it. In the words of our former governor from the state of Louisiana, to be caught with a live boy or a dead girl. You know, I can think of worse ways, but there ain't too damn many. So he throws his jughead crown into the ring. As you can see from the New York Post, here's a slogan that can't miss. Ohio Senate candidate Bernie Moreno floats reparations for white descendants of Northern Civil War soldiers. No, I'm not making this up. He really said this. Not only that, but it gets worse. Okay, let me just go ahead and show you the article here. By John Levine. Bernie Moreno, a Republican looking to challenge U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown, suggested the white descendants of Northern Civil War soldiers should be eligible for some form of compensation. Quote, "We stand at the shoulders of giants, don't we?" Mr. Moreno, sidebar, Bernie, can you come over here a moment? We stand on the shoulders of giants, Mr. Moreno. On, not at. You can't stand at somebody's shoulders unless they're laying on the ground. So, statesman and poet, he is not. We stand at the shoulders of giants, don't we? Actually, we don't. We stand on shoulders of people like John Adams, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, George Washington, I guess Murder Incorporated. Let me sidebar again, Mr. Moreno, I guess Murder Incorporated wasn't available. He names John Adams, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, George Washington, all slave owners. I guess Anastasia and Al Capone. I guess you didn't want to name them too. You should have gone ahead and thrown their names on there if you're gonna start this. Could there be a worse way to begin this? All right, fine. John Adams and James Madison and George Washington, why didn't you just say the Manson family if you were going to do this? All right. That this group of people took on the largest empire in history. Sir, excuse me. All right. They said, no, we will not stand for this, and won, Moreno told supporters at a campaign event in the Buckeye State this week. Quote, that same group of people later, white people, died to free black people. It's never happened in human history before, but it happened here in America. That's not taught in a lot of schools much, is it? They make it sound like America is a racist, broken country. You name a country that did that freed slaves, died to do that. You know that they talk about reparations. Where are the reparations for the people in the North who died to save the lives of black people? Well, those were his words. It says here, Moreno, a business owner, is the second GOP candidate to jump into the race and faces a primary from Ohio State Senator Matt Dolan. The 2024 Ohio Senate race is a top target for Republicans looking to reclaim the upper chamber. Though Ohio has a long history as a battleground, it has trended red in recent years. Incumbent Brown is the last major elected statewide Democrat. Ohio strongly backed former President Trump in 2016 and 2020 and sent his preferred candidate, J.D. Vance, to the Senate last year. In a statement to the Post, Moreno campaign spokesman Connor McGinnis, not to be confused with Conor McGregor, said his candidate was actually making a point about political correctness. Quote, Bernie was right when he said political correctness is killing our country, and the crocodile tears from the left expose the Democrat hypocrisy he was referring to in the clip. However, it's unsurprising that the liberal media missed his point since they've been complicit with the identity politics charade for years. So he says it, and then his own spokesman tries to sit up here and walk it backwards. He gets up here and tries to walk it backwards. Boy, I'm telling you, where do they find these people? Where do they find these people? You've got a candidate here who wants to help white folk here. He's sitting up here blaring the horn, blowing the bugle to remind the whole world that, by the way, this same group of people, white people died to free black people. This same group of white people died to free black people. White people. Excuse me. This is a little awkward. Well, Mr. Moreno from 2014. Well, that black-brown coalition apparently just took another hit. Could it be? All right. Well, 2015, people to watch. Yeah, you better keep an eye out for this one. You better keep an eye out for this one. By the way, in 2014, he was Hispanic. 2023, oh, shucky ducky. Oh, boy. Yeah, talk about awkwardness. 2023, yeah. Well, let's find out. Super car dealer. So he was a car salesman. A car dealer. You have to be a salesman to be a dealer also, sir. Nitpicking. All right. North Olmsted, Ohio. Remember this back in 2014. Since buying his first car dealership in North Olmsted in 2005, Bernie Moreno, so his name is Bernardo Moreno, has built the Collection Auto Group into the largest luxury dealership chain in the Midwest. His business success coincides with a rising assertiveness in civic affairs. Moreno, already vice president of the Board of Trustees of Cleveland State University this summer, joined the board of the Cleveland Foundation. Meanwhile, the Colombian immigrant has been working to unite the Hispanic business community by keynoting networking events and tapping his uncommon family ties. All right. Ohio, folks, in Ohio. This is not in New York. This is not in Texas. This is not in Florida. This is not in California. Ohio. The middle of the Midwest. He wants you to know that he is here to speak for white people. Yeah. Now, back in 2014, it was a little bit different, or at least it seemed to be that way. Moreno's older brother, Luis Alberto Moreno, is Colombia's former ambassador to America and the president of the Inter-American Development Bank. So let me guess here, Bernie. You pulled yourself up by your bootstraps, right? See, you need white folk. Well, we pulled ourselves up by our boots. Why, I immigrated here from Colombia and nobody did nothing for me. Yeah. Nobody did nothing for me. Generational wealth? What is that? We worked hard for it here. How the hell did you start a string of luxury car dealerships? By the way, y'all see this right here. The largest luxury dealership chain in the Midwest. Oh yeah, by the way, he was only 47 at the time. He was only 47 and had a chain of luxury car dealerships. And got the nerve to part his lips to talk about reparations and what black folk need to have. Well, he wants to speak on what we supposed to get. And he came here, he came in the door papered up. And first order of business, because as we keep warning you, they come from places, their points of origin, whether they come from the left or the right, their points of origin are anti-black. He's supposed to be worrying about selling cars. But he's letting you know, by the way, the real issue is them Negroes. By the way, one more time here, Luis Alberto Moreno, that's his brother, is Colombia's former ambassador to America and the president of the Inter-American Development Bank, the largest lender in Latin America. The largest lender in Latin America. In September, this is back in 2014, Moreno brought him to the offices of Jones Day in downtown Cleveland to address Hispanic and business leaders. Only 9 years in Cleveland, only 9 years in Cleveland, only 9 years in Cleveland, and you end, really? Just 9 years? And that was just all your hard work. That was just all your hard work. We did more in 9 years than you all have done in 9 decades. My brother ain't the damn president of the largest bank in Central Africa neither. I'll be damned. If my brother was the head of the largest bank in Central Africa, I'd be chewing that nigga out daily if all I got is the largest luxury chain dealership in the Midwest. Man, look here, I better be rivaling the Patels and the Penske Group if my brother's papered up like that and moving that much paper. What the hell? Your brother is the head of the largest bank in in Latin America, and all you got is a few car dealerships? That's all you got to show for it? Some of the folks in the chat room are saying cartel money. We don't know. We don't know. Investigation? Investigation, maybe? What will we find? Question worth asking. All right, they said, you've been playing more of a leadership role in our Hispanic community. Why is that important to you? My family is Spanish, so it's natural. But I also think it's important for Cleveland, as the Hispanic community of America plays a more prominent role. I think it's essential that Cleveland participates or we're in trouble. We're not seeing the same population growth. We have to make this an appealing area for Hispanics, a place where Hispanics want to live and work. Our Hispanic community is small compared to most cities, but it still numbers in the tens of thousands. Why do you think it hasn't made more of an impact here? Answer: the Hispanic community has been fragmented. It's this great umbrella that encompasses a lot of different cultures. So I try to focus on things that unite us: family, religion, business. Now, folks, what did I tell you well over a decade ago when I first began the Black Channel? What did I tell you? Did I not remind you all then that you were dealing with all these dueling European cultures? And then I named the things that they all had in common, whether they're Anglo speaking English or Spaniard speaking Spanish. If you'll remember, I said about family structures. I talked about religion. I talked about Europe as a central place of origin. I talked about empire building and conquering peoples. And so here he is saying exactly what Jason Black said all those years ago. Religion, business, which is conquest by another name. Everything that I tried to put you ahead of the curve on a decade and a half ago, so that when folks came to you with the Black and Brown Coalition, I just wanted you to understand, you call them, you don't let anybody tell you to call them brown, because they do not see themselves as brown. He's saying the word Hispanic, but as far as he's concerned, that is the same as Germanic, Anglo, British. So when you realize that's what he means, then you can't use these terms and think that you're referring to something with us. He sees Hispanic as a suburb of white. I'm sorry, not even a suburb. He sees Hispanic as a neighborhood in the white city. Hispanic is just a neighborhood in the white city. You cannot convert him into an honorary minority. And he's letting you know. He's letting you know. When I say this, I'm talking about us. All right. Next, they ask him, what can Hispanic businesses do to grow and become more successful? First of all, you have to compete. You can't just say, I'm Hispanic, I deserve some business. No, you have to compete. I call it the immigrant mentality, not the entitlement mentality. That's extremely important. You have to think like an immigrant. You have to go out and get it. This is your Republican. This is your Republican candidate for the Senate. One of the Republican candidates speaking. This is the Republican candidate speaking. To immigrants, which means legal or otherwise. This is your Republican candidate speaking. In the chat room, Mickey, you're absolutely correct. You all take a look at what's happening in New York right now. The immigrant mentality is the entitlement mentality. The very fact that you've broken into the country illegally means you feel you are entitled to a place. You're entitled to break into somebody's house. It doesn't get more entitled than that. I should break in your house and you should take care of me. Absolutely correct. If the immigrant mentality is a go out and get it mentality, I'm sorry. Well, he is being consistent. When he says go out and get it, he meant get out of Colombia. So he got out of Colombia to go get it. He didn't try to get it in Colombia. He got up out of there and said, oh, I got to go out and get it somewhere else. Starting with the go part. I'm starting with the go part. Do you see the Hispanic Business Association playing a larger role? I think it should be a part of the GCP, Greater Cleveland Partnership. If you really want to be a force in the community, you have to be involved in the community that already exists. I say you must be present to win. You can't just throw stones from the sidelines. Your brother's visit caused a sensation. How did that come about? Yeah, you know, your brother, the president of the Inter-American Development Bank, largest lender in Latin America, I imagine it did. Your brother's visit caused a sensation. How did that come about? It's his damn brother. Don't you think he just gave him a phone call? I got my brother to come up and visit. I thought while he's here, his message was very similar to what I'm saying. He'll give a $10 million loan to Guatemala, but the bank gives loans to countries where there's unity of purpose. That's what has to happen here. We can't have 10 different groups going in 10 different directions. The Hispanic community has to have a common united front. The Hispanic community has to have a common united front. And how have these cultures, these European cultures, united themselves over the course of the last 300, 400, 500 years? They've usually chosen someone to hate, and then they all get together and become very industrious at targeting that group of people. Yeah. The Hispanic community has to have a common united front. Front, people, a united front. A front is like a war. Your front is facing somebody else's front. So therefore, a united front against whom? We have to have a united front. A united front against whom exactly? Because as black people, I can tell you who we need to have a united front against. We need to have a united front against white supremacy, the biggest evil that the world has ever witnessed. It's still rampaging as we speak. We need to have a united front against white supremacy. Sir, Hispanics need to have a united front against whom? Against what? Especially in Cleveland. A united front against LeBron James? In Cleveland, there are a lot of long memories. Something that happened 20 years ago, you keep hearing about it. To move forward, you have to leave some things behind. Interesting. I wonder what he's referring to. I'm not from Cleveland, but I'm wondering what he's referring to that Hispanics need to leave behind. I wonder, was there a Hispanic contingent that didn't exactly identify as Anglos, and this gentleman here, I'm not going to use the M word, but you all know it. He's here to let you know. All right. You've been here less than 10 years, yet you're a huge Cleveland fan. Why? When I moved here from Boston in 2005 to open a Mercedes dealership, I brought like 12 guys with me. Well, I'll be damned. So let me get this straight now. I just did the math on it. Now, this article was done in 2014. Man, he was 47 back in 2014. 9 years earlier, he came from Boston. So he was 38 when he came from Boston with, quote, like 12 guys. So he came from Boston to open a Mercedes dealership when he was 38 years old, and he was doing so well that he had 12 guys with him. So he was already balling back in Boston when he was 38. Well, he's got to be just the most amazing whiz kid we ever saw in our lives. While he's trying to speak about what black people don't need. Sounds like he got his reparations package. Sounds like he got that. He goes on to say here, they all thought they would be going back to Boston. You know what? They all stayed. They all established homes and families here. Cleveland is going to be home for me forever. You can contribute as much as you want here and really make an impact. That's important to me and my wife, Bridget. Bridget sounds like a wonderful Irish gal. We're passionate about giving back to the community. It's the way my mom and dad brought us up. When you run a business, you take resources from a community. I think it's important to give back. What? Running a business takes resources from a community? Okay. Sir, I think you need to look up what a business is, actually. Well, all right. All right, folks. Well, you can see where this is going here. So I just thought we'd take an opportunity to get better acquainted with Mr. Moreno. He wants to be your senator in the state of Ohio, and he wants to make sure that you understand that, by the way, we should give reparations to white people. We should give reparations to white people for fighting to keep their nation together. Because it wasn't to free black folk, because as you know, after the Civil War, we were not free. So it couldn't have been to free black people, because after the Civil War, we weren't free. So historical revisionism in full effect, of course. But then again, it's not about history. They're not concerned about history. This is about distortion. It's all about distortion. They know they're lying. This isn't about what reality is, what accuracy is. They know they're lying. That's the reason that they're doing this. These are vicious, dyed-in-the-wool race warriors. The state of Ohio has no business whatsoever speaking on reparations whatsoever. And yet this guy has broken ranks so that he thinks that the message to send out to his crowd is about being anti-reparations. You know why he has to be anti-reparations? Because if we asked him, hey, you know what? We want to do what you did. The first thing he's going to have to do is reference all of the preferential treatment that he's gotten. He's going to have to reference that, and then we're going to have to stack ourselves up against him and see whether we not got some kinfolk in charge of the largest bank in the area. See, if we had to ask him for help or ask him for advice, first thing he would say is, well, call your brother who runs the bank. Man, what the hell you talking about? What the hell you talking about? Well, that's what we do. Yeah, that's the damn problem. You know why you got that money like that? Because you took it from us. That's why you can sit here and talk crazy now. Yes, you got all kinds of preferential treatment advantages we ain't got. All kinds. And you know it, which is why you're saying what you're saying. What you're saying is not for the purposes of spreading around opportunity. He didn't say a damn word about that. Notice that it is about maintaining the status quo. He already knows he's gotten preferential treatment. He knows damn well the average 35-year-old does not have a luxury car dealership. He knows that. He's saying that because he's saying we want to maintain the status quo. These are the folks they bringing up here. When you got Roland Martin telling us that we need to be in favor of immigration, this is what they bringing up here. This is what Roland Martin sees himself as in camaraderie with. Every time we turn around, the Congressional Black Caucus, Kamala Harris, more immigrants, Barack Obama, more immigrants. They sit up here. Every time you turn around, the landscape is getting more. How the hell can the country be, quote unquote, getting browner and the, quote, white population keeps shrinking, and yet white supremacy is as strong as it's ever been? How the hell can that be? Folks, if the white population is getting lower, and by 2050, they're supposed to be, 2050 or 2060, this will be 50% of the population, how can that be? And yet the white supremacist sentiment of the nation is remaining unchanged. How can that be if the white population's numbers are falling? It is because, as we have always tried to teach you, white supremacy is a religion. It doesn't require a majority white population. It simply requires a majority white identifying populace. And by identifying, I mean individuals that either identify themselves as, or, now here's the most important part, a population of non-white people that identify as desiring to enter into whiteness. So you see, this is how you can end up with an Officer Tatum or the Hodge twins. This is how you can end up with them. You don't have to be white. You just have to desire to have it. Once you desire to have it, well, guess what? You identify as a wannabe. So this is why they are so dogmatic. We need to bring over more immigrants. We got to have more. Doesn't matter whether it's Democrat or Republican. We got to have more. We got to have more. Because they're bringing them in from places that already have an anti-black sentiment, already have an anti-black code of conduct. And this guy right here, Exhibit A, he's supposed to be worrying about Hispanics. He sure was back in 2014. He was 9 years ago. He was concerned about Hispanics back then. 9 years later, he's letting you know what he meant when he said Hispanic. He meant white people. Now, the reason why I brought this up was because I wanted you all to know. Now, I recognize that last name, and a lot of you recognize the last name too, but did you notice the New York Post didn't say anything about his Hispanicness? You notice the New York Post said nothing about it. They didn't say anything about his Hispanicness at all. You all needed me to go dig into that and tell you. But the New York Post wasn't going to say that. So he's speaking for white people against black people and reparations. And by the way, you notice how he talks about black people like children. He talks about black people like children. White people died to free black folk. Messiah complex. Where are the reparations for people in the North who died to save the lives of black people? So I want you to understand what you're looking at. And I want you to understand what you're seeing. Because you're going to see more of this. You're going to see more of this. And I've been warning you for years and years now that this is what you were going to see. So when you realize that over a decade ago, I was making the distinction between whether they were white Latinos or Afro Latinos, because Latino is not a race. And then you start seeing that the white Latinos actually do identify and mimic many of the behaviors of the Anglos. No wonder the Anglos are so cool with them. As I've tried to tell you, you are dealing with dueling European cultures. But what did I tell you back in 2014? He came down from Boston back in 2005. By 2014, this Colombian immigrant is telling you he's setting up a dealership and he's talking on behalf of Hispanics. That's what he was talking about then. 9 years later, he's code switching. 9 years later, he's code switching, and just that quickly, he can move over into another spot. Folks, this is not a homegrown. They say he's an immigrant. He's not even originally from the soil, and yet, take a look at how he identifies. Take a look at that. I have warned you forever here that as black people, we cannot use terms like Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative. Damn sure cannot use minority or people of color, because when you use those terms, you're lumping yourself in with a bunch of other people. And you are making all kinds of erroneous assumptions about where they stand and where they land on the spectrum. When white people say Democrat, they don't mean the same thing you do. Therefore, you cannot have a consensus or an agreement, much less a damn coalition, if none of you mean the same thing. Now, you can have somebody getting exploited in that situation. Now, that can happen, but you cannot have a coalition. You can have an exploiter and the exploited under those circumstances, but you can't have a coalition. You can't have a coalition when one of the people involved does not know that the other people at the table are using the same word he's using, but they have a different meaning. See, it kind of reminds you when black folks sit down at these record labels. You sit down in front of Leor Cohen or Tommy Mottola getting ready to sign your damn life away. Because you think you understand what one album means. You think you understand what royalties mean. You think you understand what advance means, and you really don't understand what it means. But literally everybody else around the table, they're using the same word you're using: distribution, percentage, advance, royalty. They're using the same word, but they mean something different than you mean it. They don't mean the same thing. So you sitting there nodding your head, and then when it's time to execute what you put on paper, because remember, you are held to the letter of the law, not the intent. The law means what the law says, not what someone says, well, I think the intention is. No, it means what it says. If you are double parked downtown, you get a ticket for $200. Well, I mean, if I'm double parked, but I should get a ticket if I'm obstructing traffic. The law doesn't say double parked obstructing traffic. It says double parked. Oh, well, I mean, I think the intent, though, isn't the intent to stop people from impeding traffic? Well, yes, that could be the intent, but the bottom line is the letter of the law is you cannot double park. Whether you are obstructing traffic or not, your presence there is the infraction. Your presence is the infraction. If you all agree with me tonight here that you are held to the letter of the law, not the intent of it, give me the thumbs up in the chat room and hit the likes button. There's over 4,000 people here tonight. It's over 4,000 people here tonight. Maybe I got a bunch of Moreno supporters here on the sneak. But I'm giving you a retrospective here because what you all are hearing tonight, those of you who've been following me since day one, you've watched and witnessed as this has come to fruition. Remember, P. Diddy was going to usher us all into the Black and Brown Coalition. Remember? Do y'all remember they were going to do that? 50 Cent was going to usher us into the Black and Brown Coalition. Remember? A bunch of other folks out there were going to usher us into the Black and Brown Coalition, and Jason Black stood here by himself over a decade and a half ago and said, no, we ain't doing that. No, you don't understand what you're looking at here. You're looking at dueling European cultures. The only thing that they are fighting over, the only thing that they are at odds over, the only thing that they are debating over is who gets to hold the knife to cut the white supremacist pie. They're just arguing over who gets to hold the knife to cut the cake. But what they are not arguing over is whether or not it should be a white person holding it. They're not arguing over whether or not it should be a white person in charge. They're not arguing over whether or not they are doing this in the benefit of white people. That's not what the argument is. That's not what the argument is. That's the point I want you to understand. I've told you all this time, you are dealing with dueling European cultures, and these European cultures already know what they are discussing. So when they talk about immigrants, they don't mean the same thing that you do. They don't mean the same thing. They have absolutely no problem with an immigrant population and ain't gonna make no trouble. An immigrant population that simply comes out and reassures the Anglos of one thing, that they will maintain the status quo. Dr. John Henry Clark expressed it and articulated it differently decades ago, but it's very much still accurate today because universal truth is always accurate. When he said that the dominant society, as a black person, the dominant society will give you anything you want. They will give you anything that you ask for. If you are demanding something, they'll hand anything to you that you want to. You can have any position in the hierarchy you choose to have, just so long as you leave the number one position to them. You can have number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 million. You can have everything else you want so long as the dominant society is still in charge of the number 1 position. So from there, you can do whatever you want to. You can play in the NBA league. You can be the number 1, quote, scorer of all time. All those symbolic gestures that the civil rights generation was gobbling up like coon cupcakes for the last 6 decades. All those symbolic gestures, being the first Negro, being the, quote, number 1 Negro. Oh, we'll build you a statue. We'll build you a plaque. We'll do this, that, and the other. And guess what? If a white woman accuses you of squeezing her on the ass, it doesn't matter whether she's from the biggest trailer park or the biggest fentanyl junkie. If she says that nigger grabbed me, here they come to get you. No questions asked, no strings attached. So you find out that in the hierarchy, she is above you. That's what you find out. In the hierarchy, she's above you. So you see, what you find out then is that your financial achievement is, for the most part, symbolic. And what I mean by symbolic is that the power that you have among black people, you see, when you quote unquote got money, you've got power among black people. Let's be very, very clear. You do have power. You've got power among black people, but what you have among white people is potential power. You've got potential power because you've got resources, but we cannot guarantee that your resources will be honored. See, when you're among black people, your resources will be honored. But when you go among white people, there is no guarantee that your resources will be honored. Simply because you can afford a house in their neighborhood, mic drop. Simply because you have the money to afford a house in their neighborhood does not mean that your money will be honored. Simply because you have the ability to shop in one of their stores, that does not mean that your money will be honored. Simply because you've got the ability to afford a certain lawyer does not mean that your money will be honored. Simply because you have a certain credit score and a certain down payment and a certain level of income, that does not mean that your money will be honored. It might be honored. It may be honored. Hell, it may even be honored a majority of the time, a simple majority of the time. It may be honored most of the time, but no black person, there's not a single black person walking this earth who doesn't have a story of a time when their money was not honored. Oprah Winfrey, Barney's, and everything else. We can go down the list. Every black person's got a story of how they walked into a place and they had the money, but their money was not honored. You see, that's the status quo. The status quo, you see, all these decades after the so-called Civil Rights Act and desegregation, all these decades later, you are a controlled consumer class. So you see, you can be the athletes on the team, but not the owners. So that number 1 position, I'm bringing this 720 degrees of the analysis you receive nowhere else. That number 1 position, you don't get that one. No, and if they'll grab a couple of black men and make them coaches. They can afford to surrender a couple of slots for a coach. They can do that. They can surrender a couple of slots for a coach. We can throw some charity out there. And do you know why they can afford to surrender a couple of slots for coach? Because they've got the ability to fire your ass 2 years later, 3 years later. Shout out Lovie Smith. It doesn't matter if they make you coach. It's an honorary position. They can remove you at any time. It ain't like you can get in the coach's position and you have a right to stay there. It's not like once they put you in the coach's position, you're immovable. It's not like you can argue and fight to stay. So you're fighting for something that you don't own. You don't own it, you can't control it, and you can't pass it down. So of course they have no problem giving you a, quote, coaching position. You ain't running nothing, nor will you run anything. It's symbolic. And that's the point. It's just symbolic. And it always has been symbolic. That's the point. That number one position is held by them. This is why you can have the Khan family as an owner of an NFL team. You got them owning an NFL team before a black person's been allowed to come anywhere even remotely close to it. They're making a point. Well, you see, we'll just say minority and leapfrog the black folk who actually built and run the league. Maintaining that status quo. They get a bunch of folk there who are there to maintain the status quo, not there to upset it. Because you got to understand, when you start bringing black folk in, particularly, specifically, the descendants of the slaves and foundationals, when you start bringing us in, we're coming in to upset the status quo. We're not coming in to maintain it. We're coming in to destroy it. Yeah, no wonder they make sure that there's a strict filtering process. Don't bring no troublemakers up in here. Because these are people for whom they're more interested in changing things than they are in making money. See, bootlicks can be bought off easy. You dangle a dollar, and he's ready to sell his soul. He's already buck dancing. But you see, revolutionaries didn't come for money. They did not come for money. They came for change. We ain't talking about spare change. We ain't talking about spare change. So as a group, they understand what they're dealing with. As a group, they understand who the threat is. So they're doing this for a reason. They're doing this for a reason. And what you are seeing is what I warned you about a decade ago. I warned you that they are putting in the pieces in place to maintain white supremacy for the next 500 years. Is what I've been trying to warn you all about the whole damn time here. What does we've seen what the last 500 years of white supremacy have been. We've seen what that was. We saw what that looked like. Now that we have the hindsight and the retrospection of history, we saw what the last 500 years of white supremacy looks like. It's this big building phase, conquer, take, steal, whatever. Well, what's the next 500 years look like? The next 500 years is how do you remain in place as a permanent overclass? Shout out in the super chat to my man Dion Coleman. Big respect to you as always, brother. Thank you very much for supporting tonight's program. I warned you all a decade ago when people were asking, Jason, what's the strategy? Because people couldn't figure out what it was. Jason, what is the strategy? What are they going to do? How are they going to maintain power for another 500 years when their numbers are dwindling and all these hotep hobos were on the internet making straight asses of themselves, talking about, we ain't got to do nothing as black folks. We ain't got to do nothing. They numbers is going down. And I told you all a decade ago, don't you listen to these unemployed ass clowns out here talking stupid. They don't understand warfare, they don't understand demographics, and they certainly don't understand socioeconomics. And then I had to give the whole world the example they could not deny, and now everyone's citing the example now. A decade ago, for those of you who've been listening to me, you've been on top of it for a decade when I said South Africa. Take a look at South Africa. We stopped apartheid in South Africa. We abolished apartheid in South Africa, and you still got only all white neighborhoods today strictly enforced in South Africa. They're only 8% of the population, but they're 95% of the wealth. Decades after the so-called after we supposedly abolished apartheid. We supposedly did that. That's what we thought we did. We supposedly abolished apartheid. But then you take a look at the condition of South Africa 20 years later, and very clearly we didn't do what we thought we did. Now, as you all know, of course, truth and reconciliation, oh, to hell with that. I have never been a fan of that. I've never agreed with that, and I do not support it neither then nor now. But when you take a look at South Africa, the white population has intended to install itself as a permanent overclass. That simply nothing will change. When you take a look at Zimbabwe, you see the same thing. Robert Mugabe threw a monkey wrench in the works. When you take a look at Ghana, you see the same thing. Now, some of these nations are making moves. Some of these nations are doing things, but you notice they start doing things, and next thing you know, here come the colonial powers from outside of Africa to say, yeah, you gotta get them niggas up out of here. Yeah, Julius Malema sidelined. Robert Mugabe out that seat. He's too damn much trouble. So you start seeing those kinds of things occur. And what I'm telling you is that that sets the blueprint for what they want to replicate here in America. That they will be a minority of the population, but the wealth will be frozen in their hands in perpetuity. Well, what about their numbers shrinking? Their numbers will shrink, but their power will not. As a matter of fact, the lower that their numbers get, the more their power is. That's called oligarchy. You take a look at the richest men in the world. Those are all white men. So you've got 2 or 3 white men, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, who have more power and wealth than what? The bottom 50% of the society? 4 dudes that you can put in a taxi cab got more wealth than half the population. You could load up half of the nation's wealth in a taxi cab. You think they're worried about numbers? You think they're worried about population numbers? They're worried about financial numbers because they understand at the end of the day, that's what will control their power. And everything that you see in this society moves in a similar fashion. Right here on YouTube, for example, I've got to remind you again, right here on YouTube, man, don't y'all understand now, I don't want to get off into the woods of this because y'all get easily distracted and I don't want that to happen. But of course, you remember there was the fight last night, Gervonta Davis versus Garcia. Why, you had some Negroes sitting up here wagging their finger in Gervonta Davis's face. Some of them old niggas. Man, can I say that? I ain't gonna say no names, but y'all know who they are. Y'all know who they are. Some of them old niggas. Some of them used to be boxers, but okay, some of them old niggas. I ain't gonna get too far off, and then I don't want y'all to get distracted. But some of them old, y'all saw it for yourselves. Some of them old niggas whose heydays are behind them. It wasn't just him, though. By the way, it wasn't just him. It wasn't just him. He wasn't the only one. He wasn't the only one. No. He wasn't the only one now. Yeah, everybody's saying his name, but he wasn't the only one, by the way. Yeah, he was the loudest one. He was the one in the video everybody's seen, but he wasn't the only one. Yeah, y'all, you know, we gotta take a look at old Mike a little bit different. Now, I've been talking about Mike now for a while. Y'all know I've been on Mike's bumper for a minute. It's crooked. It's bad business going on over there. It's bad business. It's bad business. It's bad business. But in any case, some of them old niggas didn't like what they saw. And you can go here on YouTube and you can look up video after video. Can we all just keep it real? I didn't follow it nearly as closely as I probably should have because I don't follow that kind of stuff. You understand that? But understand, the uproar was so damn loud that it even got to me. And I'm not even following it. So I can only imagine how loud it was for those of you who actually follow it. I can only imagine how loud it was for those of you who actually follow it. I wasn't even following it. And it was loud enough that I heard it. So for those of you who are following it, I can only imagine how loud it was what you were seeing and what you were hearing. So when you look up here on YouTube, you're going to find video after video, short after short of these fellas supposedly taking Javante Davis to the woodshed. You'd be amazed about that. You'd be amazed about that. Some of these fellas here are sitting up here now. They got their fingers wagging. You can look it up on YouTube. I'm not saying no names. I'm just saying, y'all know who it is. And you see him pop up there. Now, how in the hell can that possibly happen? How in the hell can that possibly happen? That can happen because that's the way YouTube is set up to do. You see, the whole thing was, okay, well, don't worry, he gonna lose. You had Conor McGregor floating around, Oscar De La Hoya. Oh, I said I wasn't gonna say no names. Okay. But y'all saw it. They were sitting up here and we're gonna take him to the woodshed. We're gonna sit up here and say this, that, and the other. We're going to say this, that, and the other. And then the one shot to the side and the night was over. Boy, he hooked him so quick, you damn near didn't even see it happen. Hooked him so quick, you damn near didn't see it happen. All of a sudden, everybody's quiet. But let's be clear, that wasn't the way they started it. Let's just keep it real. That wasn't the way they started it. Yeah, I'm not going to say all the names because y'all will get sidetracked and then we'll be here 30 minutes later with folks saying names. So I'm not going to do all that. But by the way, I can say the name. I can say a few names if I just really needed to. I can say you can go look up the videos for your damn self. Yeah, I'm not putting nothing on nobody that they don't deserve. Oh, they all quiet now, but there was 24 hours ago, there was a whole lot more noise. 24 hours ago, there was a whole lot more noise going on. So just understand what you're dealing with. Just understand what you're looking at. And YouTube is promoting that because they understand. Do you all realize that if Garcia had won, he would have gone from being a nobody? This is what they always did. See, that's what happened with the fight between Fury and Wilder. They was hyping that up. It was just like, okay, they hyped it up so much, Fury gets knocked clean on his ass. YouTube didn't stop. YouTube was still promoting him. YouTube was still promoting him. Was still promoting him. Understand that. They were hoping, they keep coming back with the same damn thing every time you turn around. Every time you turn around, they sitting up here telling you what it's going to be. Every time. They just keep saying it over and over. Yeah, Canelo versus Mayweather. Whoever the white dude is, YouTube boosts them in the algorithm. You know why? Because they can make, if he wins, if he actually is able to pull it off, if they get the referee involved, if you can just go ahead and rig this thing somehow. Man, look here. You can make something happen. If you're lucky about it, we might be able to make something occur. We might. So it's a never-ending stream. So you know this, after all them L's they took all this damn time, next thing you know, you sit up here and you end up and here comes Logan and Jake Paul. It wasn't that's not natural selection. Every damn time you turn around, it's like that. Every damn time you turn around, it's like that. They keep doing that over and over again. Being the great white hope is a carousel. They just keep giving you shots at it. It don't matter who it is. It's your turn. Every Mayweather fight is like that. That's every Mayweather fight. Every Mayweather fight goes that way. Whoever the white dude is, they start boosting him. They start hyping him. They praying up and down. Oh, can we please? Can we please? Can we please? Can you make it competitive? Can you at least just don't get knocked down so we can claim you won and steal it? So just understand what you're looking at there, man. They understand white supremacy has got to be financed. It's got to be financed. It's got to be paid for. They got to be boosted. It's got to be. How you going to maintain this for the next 500 years? You got to be able to hand this from one generation to the next. You got to be able to do that. You got to be able to do that. So that's the point I'm making to you across the board. They make sure you're papered up and ready. We got 500 years of dominance to make sure we finance. You got to do it now. You got to do it now. You got to do it now. We're going to go ahead and take a brief break here. When we come back, we're going to be going a little bit more in depth here. We're going to go from just talking about Mr. Moreno and friends here. We're going to move it on over to the part of the world that he doesn't get to see here about the prison industrial complex and exactly how much money can be made by non-black people, of course. There's a whole lot more to that. There's a whole lot more to that. Before we do, though, we're going to take a very brief commercial, non-commercial break. I want to thank everyone, and I do mean everybody who has contributed to support tonight's program on PayPal, CashApp, Super Chat. Thank you very much for your support here. YGLT, 720 Degrees of Analysis. Don't forget to mention that old bootlick that was on Dr. Phil speaking about against reparations and buck dancing. Look, the bottom line is y'all remember I'm the dude who broke it to you. It was taboo when I said it, but I've been saying it to you forever, man. You got to watch these old niggas. No, look, I said a decade ago, we got to sweep them off the board. I ain't trying to help none of them. The next generation, we got to start with them. These old niggas are bought and paid for. They're set in their ways. They ready to die and they're ready to go extinct. We got to talk to the young cats who don't want to go extinct, who are not going to hold on to nonsense simply because they said it to them in church somewhere. We got to talk to them. I've been on that the whole time, and I have never wavered and never compromised. And take a look at the changes you see in the last decade and a half since then. I never changed and never compromised. The world caught up to me. The world caught up to me, but I never compromised it. So when it comes to these old cats, dude, I'm just going to say it just like this. Ain't nothing they going to say gonna shock me. There is nothing that they can say that will shock me. Nothing. Nothing. If you want to know where the young coons picked it up from, it's them old niggas. Which is why I went on the offensive then. That's where they got it from. And if you're going to make it go out of style, you're going to have to keep the young folk on code. Because the old niggas, man, just forget it. They're always going to be apologists. They're always going to be explaining the way. It doesn't matter how bad the situation is. They're going to say it's your damn fault for being in the street making trouble. That if you had stayed home tonight, the white supremacists couldn't have did nothing to you. If you had just, if you had just drove a different car, they wouldn't have done nothing to you. If you pull your pants up, they wouldn't have done nothing to you. It's all, the old niggas are always going to put it on you. So no, there's literally nothing they could do that would shock nor surprise me. Now, it certainly is offensive, but it's not going to shock or surprise me. We're going to go ahead and take a very brief commercial, non-commercial break. When we come back, we'll be dealing with this and more. This is The Black Channel.
Venark Motion Pictures, your leading production house for handmade, high-end movies for us, by us. Grab your popcorn and drinks as Venark Motion Pictures presents you with binge-worthy visual entertainment that will leave you breathless. Stream all our titles for free. Visit our website to see Noxious, Noxious 2, Cold Case, and Valley of the Queens. Planned Obsolescence. These power-packed, innovative, and unforgettable flicks tick the boxes of all you could ever want in a movie. And coming soon to keep you at the edge of your seat. Await our most anticipated movie release. Escape from Velocity. VidArc Motion Pictures. Broadcast excellence. Look for us on Tubi, Amazon, and wherever movies are streamed.
Order yours today to experience all the benefits of Ash Kickin' Natural Body Butter. With skin so smooth and soft, you'll thank us for it. Shop Ash Kickin' online. That's ASHKICKIN.com.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. My name is Joe Jackson. I'm a foundational Black American, and I entered the field of IT with the goal of helping the family globally. The industry's been changing, and I've learned a lot. But how did we get here? How do we navigate issues we face in the workplace? How can we get our house in order? Read The Concept and Intricacies of Being Black in IT, now on Amazon, as well as the best-selling Guide to Being Black in IT. Go to beingblackinit.com.
More Threads. A brand owned by a descendant of Black American freedmen was created to uniquely address Black American history and contributions that have been intentionally hidden and suppressed. Use their apparel and more to learn and share the Black American history of Black inventions, heroes, towns, Black business districts, and more. Sign up and support not only a Black-owned business, but a movement at www.morethread.co.
Hi, this is Brenda Starr, creator of Poetry with a Purpose and author of the book Pressed But Not Crushed. Pressed But Not Crushed is an anthology of political poems that address current and historical issues in American descendants of slave population and African American population. The book describes slavery and its residuals, Jim Crow segregation, social depredation, and other relevant issues to American descendants of slaves and African Americans, including the current political climate that does not address our issues.
This is the Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. Very glad to be with you all here this evening. And there was another story I wanted to touch on here as well. There was a story here from CNBC. Story here from CNBC. I thought it was very well worth covering here as well. It's talking about how investors cash in on $2.9 billion boom in wrongful incarceration. I'm probably going to get copyright dinged on this, but I thought it was worth reviewing here. I wanted you to see some of the numbers they got involved here. So when folks like Mr. Moreno want to sit here and wag their fingers and whatnot, there's things that they ain't dealing with. Hell, you ain't dealing with that down in Colombia, by the way.
I was convicted of first-degree murder and felony firearm. I was convicted in October of 2001. My wrongful conviction took place when I was 21 years old. So I was cut off from society at the age of 21, and my exoneration, my release happened when I was 40 years old. So we're talking 20 years. The city that I left behind was not the city that I walked into.
For the past...
By the way, just one brief thing right here. I do just want to point this out right quick. Seems to be a world of difference, in my opinion, a world of difference between this brother 20 years in prison and Kim Potter. She didn't make it 20 months. Looked like she did 30 years. So this is what this brother looks like after 20 years wrongfully incarcerated. This what she looked like, didn't even do 20 months and was rightfully incarcerated. So I ain't trying to beat a dead horse or anything. I just thought I would take an opportunity here just to point it out. All right, keep going.
I was cut off from society at the age of 21, and my exoneration, my release happened when I was 40 years old. So we're talking 20 years. The city that I left behind was not the city that I walked into.
For the past few decades, state and local governments throughout the U.S. have paid out a total of $2.9 billion to Americans who are wrongfully convicted of crimes. Of those 727 exonerees who've won settlements, their payouts average out to $318,000 for each year they've served in prison.
It's a pain that no one would want to go through in advance and say, hey, I'll give you $10 million if you go do 20 years in prison. No one would take that bet.
Thousands of Americans, like Marvin Cotton, have been sent to prison for crimes they didn't commit, and they're suing the governments that locked them up, some of them winning tens of millions of dollars. Now those big payouts.
All right, now let's talk about reparations one time here. Mr. Moreno, who would dare to speak on my people. Let's talk about that for a moment. I want you all to remember something here. You see, take this case right here where you talk about the jury.
Thousands of Americans
that paid $36 million to the men who were wrongfully incarcerated for the murder of Malcolm X. You don't get to say, well, that was a different administrator. That was a different prosecutor. That was a different judge. You don't get to say that. The city doesn't get to say, well, you see, that was some other mayor, that was some other prosecutor. We're not liable for the mistakes that they made. I want you all to understand how I'm threading this together for you here. I'm trying to catch you up in real time. If you wondered what in the world this had to do with what Moreno was talking about, just understand, Mr. Immigrant Moreno, by the way, who shouldn't be speaking on this at all. He should just be grateful he's here. But by the way, they are suing the governments in these regards because the government is responsible and they are still there. So the government doesn't get to say, well, it was a different administrator. Well, it was a different mayor. This was decades ago. None of the people who did this to you are still alive. You notice that you don't get to raise that as an excuse. None of the people who did this to you are still alive. Well, you see, they're all dead and gone now. So you see, we can't really do it. It's very unfortunate, but they're all gone now. No, it doesn't work that way. The government is still here. Because you see, when you go to court, what happens when you go to court? Anybody who's been to court, and even those of you who haven't, if you watch the court TV show, what do they say? It is who versus the defendant. If you're on trial for murder, if you're on trial for robbery, if you're on trial for larceny, when you go to court, then the docket says it is who versus you. If you're the defendant, you're the citizen, it says who versus you. If you are indicted under RICO statute, if you are indicted by the feds, what does it say on the court docket? Who versus you? Yes, it says the state. It doesn't say the prosecutor. It doesn't say the judge. It doesn't say President Biden. It says the state versus you. So let's be very, very clear. It is their laws that very clearly spell out who it is that wronged us. It doesn't say the prosecutor. It doesn't say the chief of police. It doesn't say the president. It doesn't say the vice president. It doesn't say the Senate. It says the state. If it's the feds, the U.S. government versus you. When Rudy Giuliani took down the Gambino crime family, that docket didn't say Rudy Giuliani against them. It was the U.S. government versus you. So when Mr. Moreno wants to sit up here and open his mouth, he needs to go back to being what he is, a little smarmy, slimy car salesman. That's what he needs to do. Stick to what you know. being a smarmy, greasy, grimy little car salesman. Stick your nose out of black folks' business. We already know the laws upside and down and one side the other. We don't need you to come in up here and try to sow confusion and dissension. All you can do is just sit back and watch us work. You have nothing you can input. Nothing at all. You have nothing to offer besides your monumental ignorance. You ain't got nothing to give us. Certainly not your insights, because you have none. And certainly not wisdom, because you ain't never going to get that.
Marvin Cotton, have been sent to prison for crimes they didn't commit, and they're suing the governments that locked them up, some of them winning tens of millions of dollars. Now those big payouts and improvements in DNA technology have attracted companies offering cash advances to exonerees with the hope of substantial payback.
Did you get that? Did you see that? The money, when it starts rolling in, did you hear what he just said? Well, there are companies like, hey, well, let me see if we can get in on this.
Technology have attracted companies offering cash advances to exonerees with the hope of substantial payback. That is, if they win their case. Many of these private firms are backed by venture capitalists and private investors. Exonerees face a myriad of issues when seeking compensation: an uphill civil suit against the government, mounting bills and life expenses, and the toll of re-entry into society.
Everything in the system turns very slow. You know, when you're sitting in a prison cell waiting for the courts to respond to your appeal, it's slow. When you're out of the system but still fighting with the system, everything still moves slow.
Now, let's be very, very clear, though. When this brother says this, it is slow by design. It is not slow by accident. And there's folks like Moreno here who would like that there. By the way, it is not slow by accident. It is slow by design. It is slow on purpose. That is what it is for. It is slow on purpose because that is the way the system is set up to be. It is not accidental when this happens to you. It's not accidental. You are put in there for a reason and for a purpose. Well, Jason, what are you talking about here? What are you talking about? Let me show you some folks here that the system didn't move slow for them. Never moves slowly for them. We won't even talk about all the cops and whatnot who get let out of prison way damn earlier than they should be. The system didn't move slow for them, not anywhere closely related to us. Let me go ahead and give you another example for those of you who've forgotten here. This was recent history. Yeah, the QAnon shaman, January 6th. Why, he was able to walk into the damn Capitol building with him and a few hundred or 1,000 of his regular thugs out there and whatnot. And what do you know? He's released early from federal prison. Now, he was found guilty. He was sentenced, released early. Released early. You know why? Because Tucker Carlson got on TV talking about him. Tucker Carlson got on TV. All it took was Tucker Carlson to get on TV, and next thing you know, oh, we can't leave you pinned up like this. We can't leave you pinned up like this. We got to let you go. So, yeah, just understand. It's like the wheels turn slowly unless you are the complexion for the protection. Then the wheels move pretty damn quick, from my perspective.
This investment is an attractive lifeline for many who, despite their freedom, are short on chances. Thousands of people have been exonerated from their wrongful convictions, yet only a small fraction are eligible to sue for compensation, and even fewer win the headline-making $1 million awards. After years of being locked up, re-entry into society comes at a high price.
You're basically there with nothing. You have potentially no housing, healthcare, mental health services, vocational training, employment, even an ID card you don't have. If you've been in for a while, You may never have used a cell phone. You don't know what a debit card is. I mean, it's unimaginable, really, to consider what someone's life is after having been inside for a long time and then out they go as an innocent person.
During that 20 years, I've lost family members, friends to death. You never get the opportunity to grieve. You never get the opportunity to say goodbye. To the new family members that's being born into my family, you never get the opportunity to say hello. So you have relationships that are never established and relationships that you never get closure to. You can't get those things back.
I'm so glad they got this brother here because no offense, but usually they go off and go get somebody who speak like Kodak Black or something. And he was incarcerated for 20 years. And you're like, okay, are you sure? But so I'm so glad they got this brother here because this is truly the face of wrongful convictions. More often than not, this is what they sound like. This is who you're dealing with more often than not. And to have him be able to articulate exactly what that is, you see, but once again, this we got to go above and beyond as black folk. It's enough that you are wrongfully convicted. It's enough that you are wrongfully convicted. I don't give a damn if you're talking like Dolomite. It's enough that you are wrongfully convicted. But you got to come out of prison and be a scholar and this, that, and the other to have credibility. So I'm just saying for presentation purposes, I understand. But by the way, we got to go jump through all these damn hoops and hurdles for something that we are owed. Let me tell you something. If you've been wrongfully incarcerated for 2 damn decades, how the hell you talking about you may or may not get something for that? What the hell are we talking about here? You damn right. Cut the check. Mr. Moreno, you cutting the check.
You can't get goodbyes back. You can't get hellos back.
There are a few ways exonerees can seek compensation: through federal statutes, state statutes, or in a civil suit.
There are 38 states in the District of Columbia that have a state statute that permits somebody to seek compensation either through a lawsuit or through an administrative procedure. So with respect to the other 12 states, the only way to get compensated is through a civil rights case, if you have one.
So just keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. Georgia, South Carolina, Arkansas, Kentucky, keep that in mind. Alaska, keep that in mind. And by the way, they're like, there's no law that respects that or honors that. Don't worry, DeSantis in Florida, they'll get to it in a minute. Then don't worry, they'll get that worked out in Florida so you can't get nothing there either. Watch that one. That one's coming down the pike. Believe me on that one. That one's coming down the trail. What they started doing first, they started cutting back on what you're supposed to get, and then they cut it out altogether and say, okay, the state doesn't know anything. So as far as Florida, be looking for that one. Especially Florida and Texas, because Texas has had more of them than anybody else. And look for those two in particular to start saying, oh, you know, we can save some bread if we just start not allowing them to sue after we wrongfully convict them.
Civil rights case, if you have one.
For those exonerees who can prove their innocence, the state and federal process is pretty straightforward. Some states and cities now have funds set aside to settle wrongful conviction cases. However, some exonerees want higher payouts for their time spent incarcerated.
Folks, what kind of city are you running where there are people wrongfully convicted? Think about that for a few moments. What kind of city are you running? What kind of place are you running when you got people wrongfully convicted to the extent that now you got to put that in your budget? What is the place you're running here? What are y'all doing in this city that you got so many of them? What are you doing in this state? You got so many of them, you got to make a budget. That you got to work them in as part of the budget. Who the hell is in charge here? What I'm saying is that if you gotten to an extent where you got to make it part of your regular budget, they were not wrongfully convicted. I'm going to say something else here right now. By the way, as a matter of fact, hell, they're probably more valuable in prison than not. Shout out Sheriff Steve Prater back in Caddo Parish. Yeah, it might be worth it to them. It depends, folks. It depends. How much value are they getting out of them by putting them in prison? How much value are they getting? I would submit to you that over the course of 25 years, if we can get $5 million of value out of you over the course of 25 years, well, you know what? We still up if we only have to pay $3 million. If we only got to pay $3 million, well, we're up. We're up, man. We're up. If we got $5 million worth of value out of you being, in the prison industrial complex, and we only got to unask $3 million, $3.5 million, man, we're up. We're way up. We're way up. Think about that for a few moments. We up. Yeah, when I start saying it to you like that, you start realizing, no wonder you can't stop this wrongful conviction thing. No wonder it just rolls on unabated. Yeah, when you start running the numbers, you start realizing, are you sure these are accidents? Are you sure? Because as y'all remember there in Pennsylvania, you had a juvenile judge who was just running them into juvenile prison. Running them in. That was just the one who got caught. I'm from Louisiana. Nigga, I'm telling you what they do down there. Angola ain't no joke. I'm telling you what's going on. I'm telling you, they got a whole farm and everything. You can't have a farm that big unless you can guarantee you're going to have a workforce. You cannot have a farm as big as Angola's is unless you can guarantee there's going to be a workforce. You can't have them making jeans. You can't have them making clothes. You can't have them making computer accessories. You can't have them making automotive parts. You can't have them doing that unless you can guarantee the workforce. Are you sure? Now that I said that to you all like that, are you sure that this is accidental? Are you sure they're being wrongfully convicted? I mean, I'm sure that they're being wrongfully incarcerated, yeah, but are you sure these are accidents? That is at such a level that you got to have a budget to compensate them.
Civil suits have a stronger burden of proof and higher costs associated with the court process.
What you have to prove is that what caused that was a particular kind of official misconduct. You have to show that a police officer hid evidence or manufactured evidence or coerced a confession or did something like that.
It's at this inflection point that exonerees or their attorneys reach out to litigation firms for funding. Although the terminology around the funding is used interchangeably, there's a key difference between a litigation loan and a cash advance.
First, there's no credit checks, there's no collaterals, there's no guarantees, there's no assets, and it's also an advance that it's legally defined as non-recourse, which means the only way that we can collect our investment is if the claim actually succeeds and if there's profits available to pay us back. Conversely, let's say that claim is not successful, or it's successful but it recovers significantly below than what everybody expected that it was going to recover. We just don't get paid back.
Abraham works for Tribeca Law, a litigation firm that has funded many high-profile cases over the years. In this type of funding, the money given to the
Abraham? So, I'm just asking a few questions here, sir. I'm just asking a few questions. As black people, we'd like to have what some of y'all other groups have, Jewish people, white folk. We'd like to have what some of the rest of you have. You got laws in place to make sure we don't ever have to pay out. We don't have to be subjected to going off and getting compensated because we won't end up in jail in the first place. We won't end up wrongfully convicted in the first place. You know what? I'd like to see a lot more investment on that front end to make sure that this never happens in the first place, as opposed to this type of vulture capitalism. I'd like to see that on the front end. So I would like to see us have the same thing that the rest of you have. That would be nice.
Or rates of return are applied to the principal amount given in high-profile cases over the years. In this type of funding, the money given to the exoneree is called the principal. If a case is won, this amount is normally the minimum to be paid back. Interest or rates of return are applied to the principal amount, which have a wide range depending on the firm and case. Some exonerees have quoted rates over 30%. which over a few years can double the amount to pay back. A litigation loan differs from a cash advance because the loan would require repayment regardless of the outcome of the case.
What we've seen in connection with litigation loans.
Did you hear that? Let me back it up one more time so you can hear what he just said.
For 30%, which over a few years can double the amount to pay back. A litigation loan differs from a cash advance because the loan would require repayment regardless of the outcome of the case.
What we've seen in connection with litigation loans are a number of problems. There are companies that are a little too aggressive with clients. There are companies that don't offer what is the market rate for this kind of loan. And too many times, exonerees are not aware of their options in structuring their loans to take the money over time, which can help them reduce their interest burden.
After being wrongfully incarcerated for years and then having to reprove your innocence, that trauma places an extreme mental toll on exonerees, who oftentimes are fighting in these civil suits for years. It's a perfect recipe for a predatory lender to take advantage of them at this time of vulnerability. Michigan is a gold mine for litigation funds looking to cash in. The state has one of the highest number of exonerations from wrongful convictions. Michigan has shelled out over $22 million since it established its own wrongful conviction compensation law in 2016. Marvin Cotton, who was exonerated in 2020, is one of several exonerees hoping to be compensated by the state.
I walked out of prison with nothing. So that makes for an even more difficult transition on top of the trauma from spending 20 years in prison for something I didn't do.
So in other words, what they're telling us here is that basically you're a cash cow on both ends no matter what happens. The prison makes money, the court system makes money. If they make you pay restitution, folks is making money, the lawyers make money. And then even if we're gonna release you, well, we made an exoneration fund, but we've already set up a way for that to make its way back. We set it up so it makes its way back into white society. Think about that for a few moments. We've already set up a mechanism whereby which it could find its way back into white society there. Sir, sit your ass down and have all these seats with your Colombian money up here. Sit your ass down and have all these seats. Don't speak on my people. You ain't going through the same thing. You going through some nonsense you got yourself into here. Life is good over there on your side of the fence. You have no business speaking on my people whatsoever. The only thing you can do is shut the hell up and hand us the pen. So when we sign our names on the check, that's the only thing you can do for us. You got no place speaking on us, period. You got nothing to say, you got nothing to offer, and you have no damn place whatsoever to speak on us. However, some of you might disagree. Therefore, the telephone lines are now open. The number is 646-787-1933. That's 646-787-1933. Your personal access code to the blackest radio program in existence, the only one of its kind on planet Earth today. Let me send a big shout out here to my man. New B1 Media is a lifesaver. He's out there trucking and doing his thing around Vegas, making it do what it do, turning and earning. So thank you very much for your support tonight here, brother. I see you doing your thing. Also here to Angela and everyone else who has contributed to support us for New Black Media Appreciation Month. And by the way, just one more thing just to remind you all, you know, you're hearing a whole lot of things going on and whatnot. There's some little slimy stuff going on hither and thither and whatnot. And it's April. It's the month of April. We shouldn't have to remind you, but we do remind you in the month of April. Keep your head on swivel. Keep your head on swivel for the month of April. Them folks are still out there. This is still a holy month for them. So keep your eyes and your ears open. There's a number of folks who want to catch you slipping. Keep your eyes and your ears open. We're going to go ahead and open up the telephone lines. The number is 646-787-1933. That's 646-787-1933. Your personal access code to the Black Channel. Let me get caller from area code 323. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, good evening, Big Brother Jason. This is Brother Elijah calling out of Jamaica, Queens, New York.
All right, Brother Elijah, what's on your mind?
Brother, wonderful and excellent broadcast. I got a question for you. Years ago, we would have thought wrongful, the wrongful imprisonment of black people would have stopped with the Central Park case, the Central Park jogger case many years ago. But for years later, it's like it ramped up. Do you think in your personal beliefs that they are trying to basically incorporate a slave system all over again?
Well, first of all, correction there. The Central Park 5 was not the end of it. That was just that was one of the major bellwethers of the beginning of getting them to even acknowledge that was going on. So that was the significance of the Central Park 5. That wasn't, oh, we win that one, it's all downhill from here. It's like, oh no, that was really just the first nudge to get the ball rolling uphill. That was just the first one to get it going up the hill. So, oh hell no, we're still going uphill. We still are. And now they're trying to sit up here and backslide and sabotage it so that you don't even have that anymore. So just recognize, no, that was not the beginning of the end. That wasn't the beginning of the end, nor was it the end of the beginning. That was the beginning of the beginning.
Yes, sir.
And by the way, take a look at how long as you all know, I talked to Yusuf Salam. So you take a look at how long it took for them to get paid anything. By the way, not only did they leave them in prison long enough for plenty of them to get killed and anything else, they also left them out here on the streets long enough for them to get killed too. That's the whole plan, the whole idea. This thing moves slowly for a reason. You see, when white folk get involved, the wheels of justice and the court system zoom when white folks start filing things. It zooms so damn fast. When black folks show up, all of a sudden it starts creeping along. That's not accidental. That is the system working as it's intended to work.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller from area code 415. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Denise in San Francisco.
All right, Denise in San Francisco. What's on your mind?
I'm not surprised that a Marino character like that can pop up in the state of Ohio. I was born and raised in the state of Ohio. And in a time period when the factories were closing down, family farms were shutting down, Republican clowns like Marino would show up there as the biggest distraction to their problems ever. Now, Ohio has that big train wreck spiel. It's about number 5 in the nation for drug overdoses. It's just a rough belt that's getting worse. And the Marino character pops up with all his distraction games, and I wouldn't be surprised how many votes that clown gets.
Well, like I say, I mean, what it certainly shows you is they got a certain type of, when we talk about this immigrant thing, there's a certain type that they're looking for. What this does is this solidifies this. He came from the East Coast all the way to the Midwest. This is their type of guy right here. This is their type of guy.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Could you imagine a black man moving from Boston with 12 of his friends, setting up shop in Cleveland, and then in less than a decade has the largest chain of luxury car dealerships in the region? Could you imagine that? They'd have been all over his books.
No, I cannot.
They'd have been we got NBA players and former professional athletes who haven't been able to do that. How the hell is this guy able to do this?
Mm-hmm. Columbia is known for its corruption, and he's going to try to make it seem like he and other white people are victims. I say, it wasn't absurdity.
Well, I would make one addendum to that. Columbia is known for its corruption, but America is known for its corruption. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller from area code 812. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hello, this is Penny calling from Reno.
All right, Penny, your smoke alarm beeped 3 times, not just once.
Mind, I hope.
I'm hoping it's not your smoke alarm chirped 3 times, not once. I hope it's not a triple alarm fire. Anyway, what's on your mind?
No, it's just messed up. It's been messed up. I just wanted to say that a wise man once said, "You cannot imagine the depths of Satan." And I know you're not a churchy fella, and I'm not trying to be churchy. But this kind of really foul, ugly ways of making money, usually at our expense, it blows my mind anew every time. And I'll land my plane right
it's
there.
Like I've always
Thank
told
you
all.
Again and again for bringing these
White supremacy
things to our attention.
white supremacy is an evolving organism. I said that 15 years ago. White supremacy is an organism that evolves. It doesn't stay the same. It's always refining itself. When you close one door, it's going to try to find another door. And if it can't find one, it'll try to start making one. So if you hear power tools and saws and carpentry going on, just understand white supremacy is probably trying to build a door for itself so it can find another way around. But just understand it evolves. So you have to stay eternally vigilant, because it's always going to try to remake itself and turn itself into something different, then tell you it's different. Meanwhile, it's the same old dragon. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller from area code 504. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Charles Jr. from New Orleans, B1 family. How you doing, Mr.
Charles
Black?
from New Orleans. What's on your mind?
What's on my mind is that this Moreno character, Bernardo Moreno, because I'm not calling him by his little nickname, he's taking a page out of Nikki Haley and trying to, Americanize himself.
Yeah, Nikki Haley, Bobby Jindal, Barack Obama. We can go down the list. Kamala Harris. We can go down the list. That this is the playbook that they were taught by the dominant society. Do you know this? They don't really stick up for themselves like that. And I'm not interrupting you, so hold your thought here for a moment. But I want to make this point right really quickly before I let you go on. Okay. When you take a look, for example, at the Estevezes. So when Martin Estevez came over here, and that's not his name, but when he came over here, just remember he was the first one. Oh, it's Martin Sheen. Okay, you take a look at his sons. You got Charlie. Well, he doesn't want to be called by his name, so he's Charlie Sheen. Okay, but his brother Emilio was like, I ain't doing none of that. From day one, I'm Emilio Estevez. And then they got their other brother, I think Chavo. They were like, we ain't changing it. So just take a look at that dynamic in just one family. Take a look at that dynamic in just one family. Martin and Carlos want to be Sheen, and Emilio and Chavo are like, we sticking with Estevez. So that's just within the families. Then you get out here in the greater society. So they were told early on what they got to do to get along. And just thinking that one family alone, take a look at how quickly they glum to that. Half the family's like, okay, I'm with it. And the other half is like, not so much. But brother, we call that a 50% success ratio. We'll take that every day of the year.
Right. My point was that I think that article that you read from, I think that's the only article that I can find using Google search that only says like his full name. Every other article that I try look for his actual name, it just came up as Bernie Moreno. And so I'm not surprised that the white media is probably, already running interference. And I don't think this guy is doing it, just because he want to do it. I'm pretty sure that he married his wife and made sure that he got his ducks lined in a row so that his wife had been, her family has been part of the Union, the North. So he can get in on that in case it does pass, but he ain't gonna make it because
he's not serious about that. He's not serious about that because he's an immigrant. He doesn't qualify for it one way or the other. But what he is, he's making a statement of solidarity with the dominant society. That's what he's trying to do. This is very clearly just, hey, he doesn't qualify for reparations. There's no argument he could make that would give him reparations. What's his dog in the fight? His dog in the fight is to let you know, hey, I identify with the dominant society, and it's the reason I came to America is because I understand it's us versus them, and the them is specifically black people. Thank you very much for giving this call. By the way, y'all notice they talking about black folk. Did you notice that? They're not talking about Native Americans. They're not talking about anybody else. When they talk about reparations, they're not talking about, quote, indigenous people. They're talking only about us. They only got ire for us, only got vitriol for us. For everybody else is cool. But for us, slam on the brakes. Call from area code 248. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Andrea from Detroit.
Andrea from Detroit. What's on your mind?
So, marijuana in Michigan, I'm obviously from Michigan, and it's been legal for 3 years. And I've been super pissed and been telling our, representatives why 3,600 marijuana felons are still in prison. It costs Michigan $50,000 per inmate to house them, keep them alive, feed them. And I did the math, about $180 million a year that they're wasting on people who technically should be free, that white people are, selling with impunity and immunity. So I wanted to see, like, if there was a way to sue the state for, like, misappropriation of funds, but that's not the right legal term, I don't think. But I'm just like, we need that money. Like, you can cash them out, give them $50,000 for a start, so they can have some housing, get an apartment and try to get their lives together and free those people so that we can save that money. And I'm not understanding why they're still in there. And I've talked to Dana Nessel.
No, they're in there because that's the plan. They're in there because that is the system. You understand, there's a reason why you got so many black folk in prison for, quote, drug offenses. And meanwhile, we have literally been experiencing a drug epidemic that made the 80s look like a couple of kids at school handing out Pez dispensers, okay? When you talk about the opioid epidemic, and I've seen it. I'm from Louisiana, and we don't really have the opioid epidemic like that down here in Louisiana, but I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand in Oregon. I've seen it firsthand in Ohio. I saw it firsthand in Connecticut, in Maine, in your New England states. I've seen it firsthand. One of the things, now, this is how you all know I've seen it, because it's not really something that you see in other places. What you will see is a white male and a white female walking together. That's what you'll see. I mean, they're like, a couple of junkies. That's what you see. So call it family values or whatever. When you see these videos online, it'll be a white male and a white female together. When you see these videos about folk getting stoned and the little babies are walking down the damn street because the parents are in the driver's seat of the car stoned. Man, I've seen that everywhere. I've seen it everywhere. When you go in black cities, it'll be some black male by himself. You go to these opioid cities, they walk around in couples. Now, what does that tell you? That tells you support. Do you feel me now? That tells you there's support there. Because you see, a woman's not really going to hang with a dude who can't get his hands on no money if they're all about the drugs. So there's got to be some support going on there. There has to be. Now, by the way, I'm not even talking about the Narcan and the injection sites, by the way. I'm just talking about the society in which they're living. The approach for them is not mass incarceration. That's not the approach. And furthermore, it's never been. Because if it were, the courts would have to do a bunch of incarceration simply because the numbers are so massive. Even if they only grab 25% of them, the numbers are so massive, you'd have a whole generation behind bars. What they made it very clear is, we're not doing that. You would be grabbing the Oxycontin family there. You'd be grabbing that whole family to put that together. You would grab them, but they're not doing that either. Now, if Oxycontin was made by a black family, they'd have grabbed them already. That white family that pioneered that thing there, they still making money off of it. Hundreds of millions. Yes,
I think they're the Stattlers, I think.
Yeah, the Stattlers. And they're making plenty of money off of them. Plenty. So just understand, and nobody's getting locked up. How the hell do you make that much money and ain't nobody getting locked up? How the hell are y'all walking down the streets? And I'm talking about, with black folk, you got to hide your drugs. With the white kids, they were never arresting them in the first place. That's called privilege. That's called privilege. Mr. Moreno, sit your ass on your Mercedes C-Class that you owe the bank. That's your brother, I guess y'all cool. Sit your ass somewhere. You ain't seen what we've been seeing. You haven't dealt with what we've been dealing with. Not even close. You're an insult to our intelligence that you would even open your mouth to speak on us. When you've never been treated the same. He's getting preferential treatment for his car dealerships. Even white folk. It doesn't matter how down and dirty of a white criminal you are. You're going to get preferential treatment over black people. If you shoot at the police, you're going to get preferential treatment. If you killing the kids, you're going to get preferential treatment. If you're a mass shooter, you're going to get preferential treatment. If you are just the brokest down and out drug den inhabitant, you're going to get preferential treatment. We are all seeing that in real time. So I would suggest to you, it's what you named there is a very significant thing. It's obviously horrendous. I would suggest to you it goes even further. I would suggest to you it goes even further than that. We would have to look at this a whole lot further. So when I introduce you all to concepts like reparations across the board, yes, that's one aspect of it there, but we got to go a lot further. So what I'm saying is the bidding starts right there. It hardly ends there. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller Miracle 310. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Jason. This is TJ out of Los Angeles.
All right, TJ out of Los Angeles. What's on your mind?
So I love that you're hitting on reparations. There were two things I wanted to hit on, but they're together, is Black people don't understand that the biggest value that we give to this economy is that first flip when we accept those shitty contracts. You talked about that in the record industry and like numerous other examples. When reparation hits, the incentive for us to accept those type of contracts goes out the window. And that, to me, I think is the scariest thing. So I just think as Black people, we have to understand our value. And that's what entrepreneurship, and that's what you talk about that as well. That's what entrepreneurship is about. It's moving from accepting like a poor cut of the wage or whatever your value you're generating to a higher level. So I just wanted to give a shout out. Love that you're talking about reparations. Forget what that Bernie dude is saying, and be one.
Black First, brother, thank you very much for giving us a call tonight here. Let me get caller from area code 614. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
You're on live.
Okay, you are not paying attention. Caller from area code 770. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Jason, this is Gary out of Atlanta, one of your day ones, and I just wanted to call and show respect to you, brother. I originally was going to call up to talk about, mentorship, but so you're talking about the inmate stuff. I mean, I looked up that stuff and it says like Aramark, is like one of the biggest providers for food services for inmates. So that shows like what you're talking about. Like it shows that they have their hand in the pot to make money off of money, and they have shareholdings off of it. So off of Black Black people being in jail, and I mean they have us at stock, and it's crazy.
No, I mean, Aramark is just one among others there. Aramark, there's a bunch of others out there that make a ton of money. Hell, the Johnson Corporation, they give supplies to prisons and things like that. There's a whole lot of money being made by a whole lot of people. And over the last 40 years, my whole point is, and this comes back to this Moreno guy, the whole point I've been making to you all the whole time here is that for well over a century now, you have seen the entrepreneurial white supremacist. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Is that these are individuals who go into business because they understand that the root of white supremacy's power is its economy. The economy is essential. So it's not good enough, and it's not enough to just have these sentiments. If you don't have the money to back it up, you won't be able to maintain a status quo. So your civic duty in the system of white supremacy is to get your paper up and be part of the ingrained capitalist system. That's your duty in the system because that's the only way you can keep it going. Because Black folk are always trying to get their chips up. You've always got to be in a position where you are dominating economically. You've always got to be in the game is where you have to be.
Jason, I do have a question, Jason. With all this being said that you're talking about, right? How does that Fed now play a part in the inmate industry?
How does the Federal Reserve play a part in it, you mean?
Well, no, that Fed Now app that everyone's talking about, like the last 2-3 weeks. I've been listening to people, and they've been talking about how that's going to, take over the Cash Apps and the PayPals. And I was wondering how would that be essential to what's going on, like for like the inmate
It's
stuff?
not. So like I say, just one of the things I don't like about the internet, there's a lot of things I don't like. One of the things I don't like about the internet is that people today, everybody is kind of smarmy and sleazy, and everything they're trying to do is everything's for clickbait. So every time you turn around, look, right now, there are 3 things you should not be listening to. Number 1, housing crash. If you see a video that says that, because everybody who missed out on 2008 and 2019 is hoping it's going to happen again, and it's not. Automotive car crash, that's not going to happen either. And then now you hear about the Fed and what's going to happen with the monetary supply. Yeah, you got folks out here getting clicks on videos with just straight up fraudulent clickbait, period. It's just straight up fraudulent. So Jason, what's my advice for you? My advice is don't worry about it. There's a bunch of folks who are just saying things because they want to just get you to click on it. Because here's the real thing. They say that, and then they tell you, and tune in next week for your update on it. So these are folks trying to get their YouTube channels up. Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. Yeah, YouTube is just one big fraudulent clickbait factory. It's disgusting at this point. It's disgusting. From a bunch of folks who don't know a damn thing, so all they do is go around, make the most incendiary, outrageous thumbnail images they can. See, this is the thing right here. Some folks have wanted to criticize me because I've done things in a very dry academic fashion. You know why? Because I ain't selling you nothing. These other folks out here who are studying the algorithms and getting their clickbait together and, let me make a thumbnail image, and they sit up here and become students of YouTube. Yeah, because they're trying to sell you something. And then you go off and go listen to them, and next thing you know, you're stuck right where you are. Shout out all the crypto people. Shout out all the crypto people who swore up and down that they were going to be multi-billionaires during the pandemic. Oh, nobody trusts cash money. Here comes crypto. Now the folks who were yelling to you about crypto, now they're talking to you about, Fed now. Man, don't you see they're just trying to figure out a purpose for their channel existing? But if you follow them over any length of time, you ain't going to end up where they told you were. Anybody remember Meet Kevin? How about Stephen Graham? Oh, is Jason saying names tonight? I'm good for saying names tonight. The haters can hate it. By the way, we can go down that list. I remember some of the early folk who were listening to Ty Lopez of all damn people. Now these folks are all being sued. And all of a sudden now they ain't got so much to say anymore. Now they don't want to offer you anything else anymore. By the way, all these people who were telling you up and down what they knew and what they were experts on and this, that, and the other, now that they're subjects of a class action lawsuit, you notice they're not offering you anything anymore. Their channels are starting to look more like mine now. No more crazy ass thumbnail images, overhyping things, no more false flag in here. They're like, oh hell, once the lawyers showed up, they done backed off of that real heavy. Recognize where you get reliable information from. I'm not trying to sell nothing. I'm not trying to be the biggest in the algorithm. That doesn't mean I'm giving YouTube a right to screw with my numbers. I don't want YouTube screwing with my numbers. But by the way, biggest, flashiest channel? Hell no. Most accurate? I think I'm a contender. Caller from area code 229. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Good evening, Brother Jason. This is Rob from Valdosta.
All right, Rob from Valdosta. What's on your mind?
I had 2 things. There was a football player by the name of Marshawn Lynch. And when he started, he set aside a budget because he didn't like doing interviews. And he know you get fined for it. So that kind of reminded me of, how they set the budget to the side for being sued. Because they know what they were going to do to begin with, just like Marshawn Lynch. And second, I wanted to say, I see this guy, he didn't get the Candace Owens treatment. Yeah, because you mentioned the Hispanic, the white Hispanic. He ain't a black Hispanic, so he could get away with it. Why ain't no white man come out speaking on him about speaking up for white people? Well, that white man that said, hey, we don't need you speaking up for us. He didn't get that treatment, but Candace Owens did.
Well, very good points made. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Very good points. Let me get caller from area code 469. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, good afternoon. Good evening. Jason. This is YGLT from
Okay, you got a lot of background noise going on, so I don't know if you're in front of a fan or if you're driving down the freeway with your windows open, but we have a lot of background noise, so I'll give you a couple of seconds to resolve that, but there's a lot of background noise going on there.
Is this better?
Okay, brother, see if you can give us a call back. You're really hollowed out there. Let me get caller from area code 510. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Jay from the Bay.
Okay, Jay from the Bay. What's on your mind?
Hey, what's up? I was just noticing something. Just this past week was the anniversary to the Emancipation Act, where slave owners actually got paid reparations for damages of slaves being freed. For every slave, I think they got like $300 or something like that, and amongst other things. But I just think it's funny that just, the anniversary, I think the 161st anniversary just passed, and we got a white person, and another black person I heard saying something about white people need to be paid reparations. So these people are wicked. They've always thought of themselves when it came to the loss of any kind of little thing. And if there's any tethers listening, any immigrants or anybody who's black who sees us fight for reparations, it's not supposed to come easy. They're never going to be giving us our reparations in any kind of level where they're comfortable with it. So
no, and the closer that you get to it, the harder they're going to fight you over it. That's the real thing, is the closer you get to it, the more outlandish, the more crazy, the more silly things you're going to hear, and the more hostile they're going to get. So just recognize, the closer you get to it, the more you're going to hear ridiculous things happening. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller Miracle 614. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Let me get caller Miracle 614.
Okay, caller from 614. It still doesn't have their life together, so away they will go there. Brothers and sisters, my job here as the black media is to make sure that you are aware and up to date with these things. And by the way, here's the real problem here. Here's the real problem. The real problem is, as crazy and weird and wacky as this dude might sound, yeah, it might sound ridiculous. It might sound ridiculous, but I want you to keep something in mind here. This dude is papered up. This dude is papered up. Do you understand that? Do you understand this guy's papered up? And he's running for Senate. And he's already saying all the right things to all the white things. Folks, what I'm telling you is he can win. I'm telling you that he can win. And up until now, you were used to hearing this sentiment stated like this from your white conservatives and white Southerners. Now you got somebody who doesn't come from the Southern United States. He comes from South of America, of North America. But he's talking like Robert Byrd or any of these other unreformed Confederates that you could name. He's talking just like them. What I'm telling you is that white supremacy knows that it has a ready supply and a ready reservoir of individuals it can bring over. And by the way, he's been here for decades now. He's not new. He's been here for decades. They've sat back and let him build up his paper. You know why? Because he let them know he's on the team. And they just made it clear, okay, as long as you back in our play, you're good. Long as you're back in our play, you're good. This is what our children and grandchildren are going to be up against. Bull Connor is dead and gone, but the next generation of white supremacists is right here. And they made it their goal, first and foremost, make sure you're papered up. Because you see, if your money is straight, you can't be punished so easily. So the paper is straight. Now let's go ahead and see if we can take some political offices here. Folks, his money is straight. He's saying the right things to these people. What I'm telling you is he's positioning himself. He can win. I am telling you that he's positioning himself. And yeah, he can win. He can win. Do not deceive yourself for one moment and tell yourself that he cannot win. And I submit and suggest to you all right now that the future isn't going to look like Julio Cesar Chavez. The future is going to look more like Mark Cuban and this guy. It's going to look more like this. The path forward is going to look more like this. So we need to be aware of what we're dealing with and exactly what we see so that you won't be taken unawares. Folks trying to catch a job and this, that, and the other and telling yourself, well, they minorities like us. You better ask him because he's literally telling you that he's here to speak on behalf of white people. And if you don't recognize that for the threat it is, it's probably because you think you're going to whore your way through the revolution. I assure you it will not happen. I assure you it won't. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up here tonight. If you are new here to the Black Channel, welcome to the Haven of Intelligent Black Thought. We do this every weekend. Click that red subscribe button. Click that yellow notification bell. Join us each and every time that we are here. If you haven't been to our website, blackchannelfilms.com, you want to go and check out our groundbreaking best-selling documentary work, 7 a.m., Gentrified, Race War, all available on DVD and streaming. Go to blackchannelfilms.com. That is blackchannelfilms.com. I want to thank all of you for joining us here tonight. Thank you for tuning in live or recorded. Thank you for liking and sharing the program. And thank you especially for supporting tonight's program on PayPal, Cash App, Super Chat, or Venmo. And this concludes tonight's broadcast of The Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. And until next time, my brothers and my sisters from around the world, remember, black is the future, and the future is uncompromising.